Hello and welcome. The right-wing extremist volunteer militia Rusich that's fighting on the Russian side has published 11 points what is going wrong with the Russian side, and it gives us deep insights to the dramatic problems the Russians are facing, which causes significant morale problems as well. We are talking about this document. I'm going to link it to you in the description so you can read it yourself. It's published in Russian, so you will have to use either Google Translate or maybe Deeply to translate it. The first point they are mentioning is that officers are not being responsible for losses they occur. The individual soldier is being threatened with imprisonment if he doesn't follow orders, if he doesn't attack when he's told to. He's told to do so, but the officers take no responsibility whatsoever about losses. They mention a regiment, so that should be 1,000 to 3,500 soldiers being completely combat ineffective after just 1 month because of the losses they incurred, and the officer faced no problems over this whatsoever. They mentioned there is no tactical plannings. The soldiers are being told attack faster, march forward, advance, but they have no clue. They have no local knowledge. They don't receive maps. They have no understanding of what the goals even are. They have no communications. They have no idea what their mission is. They are just being sent forward. Wounded personnel and deceased personnel is not being evacuated properly. They mentioned that the medics are waiting 3 to 5 kilometers behind the front line for the infantry to bring them whoever is wounded. They complain that they don't use armored IFVs, armored medical wagons, whatever, like armored vehicles to evacuate the wounded for medevac, but they wait for the infantry to bring them by foot. This is devastating for morale, they say, because who is defending a position to the last if he thinks he might be left behind because there's nobody going to evacuate him and he might bleed out. Corpses at times are not evacuated, even in positions close to positions over days on end. They mentioned, for instance, 7 days corpses were lying around, nobody took care of them, and obviously right now it's still summer, so you can imagine what that means for the morale of the people if they smell their rotting comrades that are not being evacuated. They are mentioning that the transport of personnel is similar to what is happening with the medics. They are being dumped from their APCs from their trucks far beyond the front line and then have to march forward. The Ukrainians, they mention, instead use their armored personnel carriers to move to the front line, disembark their personnel and then retreat. There was an example where a unit asked for support, and for 2 hours they were just searching who could even be sent to support them, and it took then 5 hours longer for this support to arrive on foot in the position, as there were no ready reserves, no APCs to bring them. And this is generally a problem because there are no reserves with APCs or with any mode of transportation that knows the location and that can directly come to aid. This is also something obviously that the Ukrainian side should really appreciate it in this record. They are also mentioning counter battery fire once more. This is a big topic now on the Russian side. They say their own artillery doesn't have the necessary range to compete with the Ukrainians. Often they are just being left in their positions to basically endure the enemy fire without any response. Their own artillery is not able to compete with the Ukrainian artillery. They can't even reach them. And while they have Krasnopol grenades, which are guided to strike individual targets with precision, they barely have any of them. They have far too few, and there is no illumination for them. As Krasnopol is laser guided, it has to be guided either from the ground or from the air. Somebody has to point a laser to where the grenade is supposed to strike. And obviously with counter battery from the ground is fairly impossible. And in the air, what is usually used, they mention, is the Orlan drone, but they have far too few of this, so this doesn't help either. They also mentioned that while the Tornado S has the necessary range, that's a multiple launch rocket system, it is far more vulnerable to the enemy's electronic warfare systems than the enemy's HIMARS is. So HIMARS is far less vulnerable to electronic warfare, and they mentioned that the Tornado S is often missing by 700 to 1,000 meters. So basically it's going anywhere but where it's supposed to hit. They're also talking about communication problems. The Russian ASART system, which we have here, that is being sold by Rosboron Export. So it's by the Russian state run defense companies. It's being produced here. ASART is meant to be the radio system for the Russian armed forces, and the technical data that is being published about it isn't what it actually can do. So basically they sell something that overpromises and underdelivers when it comes to its actual capabilities. There are barely any repeaters, so communication even with ASART is troublesome, and in many cases volunteers have bought radio equipment that is where it is impossible for them to communicate with each other. For instance, the frequencies used are different, or if it's even encrypted, the keys are not compatible with each other. So often the units can't even talk with their neighboring units. There is no communication, and neither the commanders nor the communication platoons bother and care about it. They are just being left alone with that situation. The units also are suffering severe problems as they don't receive the promoted prizes for damaged equipment. You might recall that the Russian Ministry of Defense offered money for the first one and for everyone to destroy a Leopard, to destroy an Abrams, a Bradley, and so on. Basically, they offer money if you achieve a military goal. And while they mentioned that this wasn't the invention by the soldiers, but by the Ministry of Defense. So first of all, the Ministry of Defense offered those rewards, and now it doesn't deliver. They don't give any money to those that are actually achieving what was demanded for them to receive it. But at the same time, they mock the Ministry of Defense, which is talking in their own words about millions of killed Nazis, so millions of killed Russians, and about several hundred shot down Death Stars and at least 12 shot down Superman. This is exact words in this article, which I will link to you in the description in case you're interested in reading it yourself. They also mentioned that rewards like medals are not given to the soldiers that deserve them, but only to bootlickers. They mentioned as an example where somebody who was the driver of the commander or somebody who might have damaged 12 DJI Mavic drones would receive an order for courage, and the guys that are 6 months in the trenches on the front line would receive nothing at the same time, showing how devalued those orders, those medals are considered to be now, as they are only given to bootleggers. They also complain that doctors and hospitals close to the front line do not receive medical equipment and medicine, etc., according to their needs. They still receive peacetime supply, obviously disregarding the high number of losses, wounded, etc., that are occurring in heavy fighting along the front line. So the medical equipment is absolutely insufficient. And the interesting part is the end, which we can see here. I'm going to show it to you now. They mention, start following these steps and you will be very surprised at the changed attitude of people, indicating a severe issue with the Russian morale. Now, this is important as it is one of the more well-known Russian volunteer units that is fighting on this side, but it has to be put at least somewhat in perspective. Now, we all know that there were some who were promising the Russian would collapse within 3 or 5 days after the beginning of the Ukrainian counteroffensive because their morale is so badly. Well, this hasn't happened. And while we do know they have morale issues, those are obviously not big enough to lead to a complete collapse along the front line. And this is probably nothing different in this regard. And one more important thing has to be said here. We're talking about Rusich. While this is an article from them on a page they've used in the past, it's still a volunteer unit. So it might be somewhat different with regular units of the Russian army. They might receive better medevac or things like this. So it can't be generalized for all the units, but it is still highly interesting to see the problems the Russians are facing on their own side, and that should give the Ukrainians a fair amount of hope. If you like this video, please hit the thumbs up button. It really helps with the algorithm. Leave your comment in the comment section what you think about this article from Rusich. And if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. Tomorrow is going to be the next situation report, where we go in extended where I've accumulated extended informations about the developments along the front line, the international support, the mobilization, the political developments, etc. We go in depth about what is happening along the front line, and you might not want to miss this. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already doing so. And that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.